So I invited Steve today to talk to me, and it's a very meaningful conversation that we're about to have here for me personally, and I hope for you to a certain extent as well. Background is that the gallery, which remained in business and operating for 34 years, will change its name to my last name from Craighead Green Gallery to Bardin Gallery. So I'm very excited about this change, but I felt like we needed to pause for a moment and give Steve, who has been a vital part of the gallery for the last 34 years, a platform to speak and reflect on that time together. So that's why I wanted to sit here and talk to you. And also, Steve, you are obviously a wonderful friend that I have won over the last 5 years here. So it's been a really wonderful time with you, and so I couldn't think of anybody else.
I believe we
better to talk to. So
I believe Kenneth and I were the first people you had met when you moved here. I believe that you and Kenneth, okay. I think Kenneth and I were the first two that you met when you moved here from Germany, right?
That's exactly right. I landed, and the next day, really with a jet lag, I came to the gallery and was like, wow, this is beyond what I expected, and it was really quite wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. We liked you, so we thought you could stay. We didn't want to throw him back, so.
Yeah, so I want to start this conversation and kind of move maybe through time at the early beginnings, and then kind of move forward on how the art gallery business has changed, how was it operating, and how did you build this amazing gallery that has been around for 34 years, which is very uncommon if you didn't know for a for-profit gallery to be in business for that long. So you've accomplished something amazing, and I want to talk to you about it.
Okay.
So take us back to 1992 is when the gallery first opened. How did you actually begin that process? How
Well, it goes back to December of 1991. I had gone to a Christmas party and met Kenneth, and so we became friends, and then obviously more. And I had a number of friends that were artists at that time: Joanne Myers, Claudia Fisher, Nick Troilo, and Kenneth was in the interior design business, and I'm a lawyer. But I've always just had a passion and a just love art. So it made sense, because he was in design, that we might want to talk about doing something together. So we decided by about May, June of that year that we would look into what the art scene was in Dallas. So we drove around town, went into various art galleries, and we just found that it was very odd, because you'd walk in a gallery and no one would say anything to you. It'd be like you were invisible. And we thought, that was, how are you growing a business that way? Because you're not warm and fuzzy. You need to be warm and fuzzy with any type of business. So we were determined that that was not going to be at least the way we did business. And so we kept working on this idea, and we started looking at locations, and we were originally going to open a location in Deep Ellum. Thank God we didn't, because it was a very difficult area then. It's still a very difficult area, and I know the city's trying. So we somehow fell into finding out that there was a space on Cedar Springs and Maple, and originally we were going to use half the space for our gallery, and there was going to be a nonprofit company that went in there that would be selling artworks that were from the Amazon. And so it was nonprofit. The money would go back to the Amazon forest, and that. Well, apparently the IRS didn't like that, so they said no. So now it was, oh crap, we're going to have to take the whole space, which at that time was 1,800 square feet. And we thought, well, can we afford it? Well, the good thing was that the landlord was very receptive to what we were doing. He agreed to, at that time, $500 a month on rent, and that location was pretty good. Now it'll be amazing, but and so by September of that year, we decided let's go ahead and open the gallery, and we kept going back and forth, Green Craighead, Craighead Green, Green Craighead, Craighead Green. And I was like, you know what? We'll leave. Kenneth, you can go first. So it'll be Craighead Green. And that's how it all started.
You just left the stage to him, I guess, to a certain extent.
Well,
So,
he was going to be there running it more because I practiced law. Um, I took care of the business side of everything. And where Kenneth would be the face, he would work with the artist. He had the interior design knowledge, so we needed to set the space up, how to hang the artwork, all the things that you need for the day-to-day business. I was there on the behind the scenes, taking care of tax filings and business and legal and whatever, all the other financial stuff, and obviously doing my part in terms of whatever I could in terms of the day to day, or obviously for 32 years I worked every Saturday, so I was doing my part as well.
yes, very much so. I can attest that. So definitely. So you were kind of touching on the Dallas art scene, what it was like, but you mentioned that most galleries, they wouldn't talk to walk-ins, and you didn't want to go into the deep elm space because back then a lot of galleries or artists were situated in the deep elm area, right? So can you expand a little bit more on what your findings were? Like, what did you want to do? What did you find inspirational? What was kind of something you wanted to stay away from, like being greeting people actually, and being trying to grow a good business model. So what really resulted in that? So
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. We just wanted to make sure that our gallery at the time was accessible, and we wanted to meet new people. But when it came to artists, we were very open to finding new artists. At the time we opened, I can remember I mentioned Claudia Fisher and Joanne Myers and Nick Troilo were three of the artists we represented, and we were trying to obviously build a stable of artists. So we continued to, wanting to look at artwork. People would easily come by and bring us work to say, hey, do you like this or not? When we first opened the gallery, we had this great idea that we would do half contemporary and half traditional, which was an idea that was not a good idea, because people, when you're trying to build a relationship with people, you need to show them that you know what you're doing in terms of a direction. This is, they come to a gallery because not to look for, it's not Walmart. So, they want to know what your direction is, what are your likes and dislikes. We liked the traditional work, but it was more on the contemporary. So it took us a little while, and we paid the price because we didn't make any money for a long time. But you just kind of learn we needed to have a niche, and we finally were able to start working from there.
that's interesting. Well, talking about money, do you remember the first piece you sold?
Kenneth and I discussed this yesterday. It's been so long. We believe it was a Joanne Myers piece, and I had known her for a number of years prior. And I still have two pieces in my office that are really cool. So I think it was probably a piece by Joanne Myers.
Okay. And you were saying that for a long time you didn't make money, which is, not a great business model looking at it at first, but, when was the first time that you were thinking, okay, this might actually work out financially, and, the whole thing might actually take off and work?
Well, in 1992 there was a recession, and I don't know if it had something to do with the savings and loan crisis or something similar to that in '92. And so we were lucky because we were opening the gallery right as things were going to start going back up. So we picked the perfect time by chance to do it, and it took I mean, it'd be every month. I would tell Kenneth, okay, you have to write a check for this amount. I have to write a check for the same amount. Keep putting money in the business to make sure that we could pay the bills. Uh, we didn't have any other employees, so it was just the two of us. We couldn't pay ourselves. And it took about, I can remember, it was probably about 2.5 to 3 years in. There came a month, and I told him, I said, guess what? We don't need to write a check this month. Now, a couple more months after that, we had to write checks again, but at about 3 to 3.5 years, it was enough. It was making enough money to pay for itself, and then we could start periodically, every now and then, take a little money here and there. So it took a while,
Yeah.
but that's a business. I tell people, because part of my, as a lawyer, I'm a business transaction attorney, and so I tell people, you just need to be prepared. It's going to take a while for a business to grow, and you're going to have to, you know, forego some things, but eventually, if you keep doing it and you have a direction, it will be successful.
Which you made it successful. So you have proof to that saying. So, but I want to talk about building the actual gallery as well. So, when people walk into the gallery space, they see, beautifully hung paintings on the walls, and they really see the behind the scenes of what actually goes into that. So, starting maybe at the very beginning, you need artists and people who buy the art on that you're showing. So, what was it harder? What was harder to find? Was it harder to find the artists or the actual clients who you're working with?
I, it was harder to find the clients because artists, there are amazing artists, obviously, around the world, and in Dallas, and in Texas, and the U.S. And a lot of artists can't get representation, and that is part of the reason I'm maybe going out of the bounds a little bit. For the show that's up right now, New Texas Talent, it was to give artists the opportunity to show in a for-profit gallery and to understand what it takes to show in a gallery, to show your work, to make it presentable, do it right, use the right materials, the right framing or whatever. And so, to go back to your question, getting the clientele, because again, it was getting people to recognize that you are legitimate and that you're going to be there and you're standing behind what you're doing, and that tomorrow we're going to open the doors and it'll be just like yesterday and it'll be the same way tomorrow.
Yeah. So that consistency, communicating that to collectors was very important. So what were some other ways that how do you reach out to collectors? How do you find people, and how do you make sure that they actually come into the door?
Well, this is 1992. The internet was just starting ish. Uh, we we had a ton of mailings. Uh, it was not easy. And it wasn't as easy as getting information out today, but um, word of mouth, friends, meeting new people, family, um, just we did anything we could
Yeah.
to get people to know. Plus, where we were in '92 at Cedar Springs and Maple, Edith Baker Gallery was there, and Edith had been in business at that time probably 20 years. Nancy's here. And so she obviously had a big following, and so that helped because then people were like, "Oh, look, there's another gallery." At the same time, there had been a gallery next to Edith's. Was it Beverly Gordon? Who she was a lovely woman, but as we opened, she closed, and so we were like, "Oh crap, is this an omen or what?" And luckily, it wasn't. But it was the time where there was a recession, and we just happened to start at the beginning of the way back. So we were lucky in that respect.
Yeah, timing is sometimes
Well,
everything, I guess.
yeah.
But now to the other side of finding artists, you mentioned that there is a, as harsh as that sounds, but there's an over um, offering of artists out there. There's not enough galleries to show all the art that is out there. So how did you kind of which artists you're going to show. Which you mentioned that you wanted to first do contemporary and more traditional work side by side, but that didn't really work out. So where did you kind of take it from there?
Well, I mean, we obviously knew some artists who knew artists, and so they would have, say, hey, go by them, or they'd call us up and say, hey, I'd like you to introduce you to this person. And so we would, look at their work and see, first of all, obviously there had to be a connection with the person. There had to be connection with the artwork that they had. And in terms of what we were trying to build, in terms of maybe pricing, it could have been out of, not, it was too expensive and we needed to stay within a certain range. The style was something we may not have liked, whatever. We were looking really things that we liked, people that we liked, and then of some their where were they showing, and other galleries around the country. We would travel as well. We'd go to Santa Fe a lot and look at the art there. We would see artists and hanging in whatever gallery. We would at that point try to track them down and see if they wanted to show in Dallas. And what was a pleasant surprise is most anybody that we did that with um, readily accepted the opportunity to be in Dallas, and I think they recognized that obviously Texas was a big market, and that Dallas itself was a good place to be. So we were fortunate. We had a lot of people like Susan Sales from years ago, or others that we just asked them, and they were like, yes, of course. And even European artists, we actually have Erjo Edelman. He passed away a number of years ago, and he's from Sweden. And we actually had seen his work at a gallery in Houston. And I remember Kenneth was in another room, and again, we walked in, and no one helped us. No one said anything. And Kenneth's like, oh my God, come here, come here, come here. And I'm walking in the room, and he's like, look at that. And I'm walking, and he goes, don't touch it. And I'm like, why not? And because it looked like there was twine on this, this box, and it was the painting. It's a trompe l'oeil painting, and we contacted Erjo in Stockholm, and it was like, yes, I want to show in your gallery. So I was like, yay! And it was just, it just kind of evolved.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned Yerjo Edelman. He is now, I mean, after his passing as well, his market has been kind of blown up, and it's like there's really a great development from that point. I'm sure even through to the time of his death, there he developed so much of an art as an artist, and as a collected artist as well. And even if you look around right now, this is the New Texas Talent Show, which you started 33 years ago, has really become an institution in Texas, I think, to show emerging artists and be somewhat of a starting platform for emerging artists. And many of the artists who've went over through this exhibition over the years, have gone on to have really amazing careers and be museum collected and all these things. So,
and then that was very important to us. And also, I'll be honest, we needed a show in August, July, August, because in Dallas it's 100 degrees. And it was a very slow period of time. So the concept there came out, like, what can we do to create some interest in the arts in a kind of a dead period of the season? And the idea came about, let's do New Texas Talent, which is trademarked by me. And let's give artists throughout Texas the opportunity to show their work. And again, to be in a for-profit gallery, to understand how it works, to be an artist, to be a professional artist, and from the very beginning, we used to have to look at slides. Nancy was one of the jurors. It was all through slides in the projector, one by one by one. And there would be like 4 different racks full, or God knows how many. And it was a lot of work then. Now it's much easier because you can download and sit in front of your computer and do it. But it was just, we just thought it was a great way to find new work, new talent, and find something different, perhaps.
Yeah. Do you remember a particular artist who has gone through New Texas Town and you still are following, or you admire their career, what they've done?
I mean, there's a number, and if I miss somebody's name, I mean no harm. Marla Ziegler was one. Marla, she still shows, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
she still shows at the gallery.
Yeah. So Marla Ziegler was one, and also like Rebecca Shoemaker,
Mm-hmm.
who you can see her. I don't know if there's a piece hanging. There's actually one on the ledges.
Yes, I think there is one.
Those are two people right off the top of my head that I can think of.
Yeah.
There's probably another two or three more. But,
yeah. Well, as you said, we try to recruit the emerging artists who go through the exhibition, who really are make us stop and wonder, and are just amazing artists. So that's,
and even if we
usually
didn't pick them up, there was a lot of other galleries that did.
Right.
So it worked well because when we'd have the opening, a number of gallerists would come around, and like, oh, do you have information on this artist? I'm like, okay, well, we may show them first. I don't know, but anyway, it's fulfilling because you gave people an opportunity, and that's what most people want. Just give me an opportunity, and I can see where I can go from there.
Yeah. So the gallery business is dependent on the artist that is showing, but you also, you are a good salesperson. So is Kenneth. And you need to be able to sell the work that you have on the walls, actually. So do you think there's anything particularly different in selling art than other commodities?
Well, I always tell people, you really don't sell the art. The art sells itself. Every piece of art has a home. And so, I can tell you a number of times that there were pieces that I'm like, oh my God, that's gonna be the first piece that sells. And it didn't sell. And it's not because it just, I would want it. It's a wonderful piece, but for some reason it didn't resonate with people. So that's what's more important. The artwork finds its home rather than me trying to sell it. Now, there are times people come in and they want, it's got more lavender or what coloration they need, and we can show them various pieces. But for the most part, it's really just that it's an emotion. Obviously, you want it to be a good emotion if you're going to look at a painting or a sculpture or whatever on a daily basis. That you want to feel happy, make you feel like it reminds you of something you did in the past, or somebody, or whatever emotion. So that's why I always tell people, we really don't sell it. The art sells itself.
Okay, so just having
That's
great
why I
art.
was shaking my head.
Just having great art on the walls will do your job for you. And
well, great art and great artists.
Yeah,
the artists are also, reputation also helps sell art itself. So good reputations, people knowing the artist over the years, collecting them, seeing them in other galleries throughout the country or the world, gives some legitimacy to it as well. So that helps too.
Interesting, yeah. So from the collectors who walk through the gallery, was there ever like a person that came into the door and you were like, oh wow, you were very surprised that that particular person bought that particular piece of art?
Greg and Susan Baton for two. They're here. It's hard to, well, yeah. Good friends of Pam Nelson is George and Laura Bush. And Laura comes to the gallery about once every 8 to 10 months. And one year she came in, and Isaac Smith is an artist that does wood carvings. He passed away as well. And we had an eagle, and this big eagle, and she bought that for George for a Christmas present. So that was kind of cool. I still have a copy of the check, so yeah, I mean, it won't do me any good, but it was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. The signature might be worth something.
Well, I don't know about that, but
so So what do you think, you had a lot of kind of salespeople in the gallery as well, so what do you think kind of trying to oversell the art was the most common mistake, like just let people be with the work. If they don't like it, they're not going to buy it anyways, and you don't have to sell them on it? Or did you, from people who worked for you, how, as I did at some point, were those like kind of the most common mistakes, or what were kind of the things that you were thinking where you could teach people how to be relevant and make good decisions on selling work here?
Well, I mean, again, okay, so people would come in the gallery. There are two types of buyers. One that wants to be able to walk around, not be bothered, look at the art, whatever gives them the emotion, and then want you to, to be there, answer questions. And then there's others that want you to walk them around and show them everything. That and either one is great because we all have our ways of wanting to experience art. Hard sales are where we had one employee years ago that would just call people up. Well, if you're not going to buy it, we've got three other people that are. And after a while, we got a couple of phone calls from people, and there were clients, and your employee is a little too aggressive, and I'm like, this is not good. So I always, and I think we told you this, give people, say hello, greet them, because that's not the way it happened when we started looking at art. No one would say hello, say a word, greet whoever walks in the gallery, and then say, hey, if you have any questions, let me know, and they'll let you know. And that's how it works. Just give people the opportunity to breathe and take in the space, because there's a lot to look at.
Yeah, yeah, and that, I think that is the most of the best strategy as well. Because I think walking into a space and you feel alienated by it not being greeted, but also you know you don't want somebody hovering over you as well.
No.
So it's I take that advice very seriously until now. Okay, let's see here. Do we have another microphone? There we go. Pit stop right here. Okay, great. So when selling a piece, was there ever like a very memorable or strange situation you faced? Like, do you remember anything off the top of your head?
Well, I talked to Kenneth about this yesterday because, there was one time that we had Marla Ziegler's work on the wall, and Marla's work is very monochromatic for the most part. And a client came in and she asked Kenneth, how does the artist do this? And he goes, well, it's clay and this is how it's done. And she's like, it's not clay, it's metal. And Kenneth said to her, no, ma'am, it's clay. And she just wanted to argue with him. It was metal. And so he finally looked at her and said, you know what, you're right, and walked away. And it's just, what do you do? I mean, that was one of the stranger things that ever happened. I mean, there were probably, this wasn't strange, but because we were originally across from Stanley Korshak, right there in Maple and Cedar Springs, Jim Neighbors came in once. I thought that was pretty cool. We also one time decided that we were going to let the gallery be used for a television program, Walker, Texas Ranger. They paid us $500, and it was like, wow, this is manna from heaven. And we'll never do that again, ever. But it was, because it was a big mess. But yeah, I don't know. There's probably been a few other.
I'm sure
times.
there's plenty of stories you could
30 years
tell
yeah.
of 30 years. But yeah, speaking of 30 years and long relationships like the one with Marla, many of the artists here have been with the gallery for 20, 30 years, and that keeping those relationships alive for that long, there, needs to be some sort of secret sauce, I guess, to keep on these artists for that long. And what would you think is the reason to be able to maintain artists' relationship for that long?
Honesty, if things aren't working, to talk about to the artist and tell them, you know, this is not working for whatever reason, and give them the opportunity to see if things can change. And if they can't, then to say, you know, perhaps it's time that you want to show in another space because it's just not working. Um, but at the same time, dedication. There's a lot of dedication for the artists for the work that they have to do. Listening to us, we listen to them. Trying to help them get into other galleries throughout the country or the world. Um, just kind of just working together, and most of the time it works. There are times that it doesn't, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I hear also there's certain other obligations they have to an artist besides selling their work. Maybe there's helping them getting more recognition across the country, or what else would you think there is to help an artist to be able to maintain that really long lasting relationship. And
Well, I think it's friendships. I mean, we develop more than just a business relationship. We develop a long-term friendship with them as well. I mean, when Kenneth and I lived together, we used to have dinner parties with the artist at our house. We would do things here, so we would create the camaraderie that needed to be, and then having them know each other, because it helps that maybe we had a number of artists at the time that may have been living in Santa Fe that would come to Dallas for these events, that we'd have big artist events, and that helped local artists get to know, perhaps, hey, you might want to call this person in Santa Fe or Los Angeles or wherever as a reference. So it was helping. It was just building relationships and giving the everybody the opportunity to grow.
yeah. And was there ever an artist that you believed very strongly in, but your collectors didn't?
Yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, I give names, but that doesn't do any good. Yes, that would happen as well.
Mhm.
Or I remember once there was an artist from Santa Fe, just did beautiful, beautiful paintings, and I guess he read a book called The Artist's Way, and somehow it changed his outlook on art, so that when he finally agreed, and this is after a number of years that he would show at the gallery with us, he changed his style completely to very dark and just, I don't want to say angry, but very dark and kind of moody, and it didn't do well. And we couldn't sell anything because people were all happy to, because they knew his work from Santa Fe. They were excited that he was going to show here, and then he came in with work that was completely different than what he'd ever done, and it just didn't do well. And that would be I would use that as an example with certain artists. Say, I know you're getting tired of doing the same thing over and over and over. A subtle difference, a subtle change is okay, because people can see a progression of your work. A 180 is it takes people, that's not what people know you for. And so, without naming names, that was an example.
Okay. So obviously the artists learned a lot from you, from your input, and respected your input. But was there ever a situation where you realized you could learn from an artist about running the gallery or your personal life as well? You see something that they did, or where you were really impressed and um, took that over.
Hmm. Well, I can't paint, so that never happened. Um, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think learning from being around. As a lawyer, I deal with clients one on one. They have an issue or a problem. My job is to fix or figure a direction. In this business, working with the artist, first of all, the art, every piece to an artist is very personal. And so when they get a body of work together, that's a very personal body of work for them. And so I would say, to answer your question, it helped me to become a little bit more sensitive to people, because of the sensitivity of the artist. and talking to them and understanding the body of work, where they came about the ideas or things like that, which is something I would not have ever thought because I didn't think that way.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the best answer I can get.
Yeah, that's very very valid. I think it's interesting to learn from creatives when if you're more on the business side and what can you implement in your own creative uh, workings, and what can you copy over or take as inspiration in your own life and from a creative, in a different world.
I think my mother would agree too, right, Mom? Yes or no?
Right. We'll get to the audience questions later. So, um, and I was also wondering, yes, the of representing so many artists throughout the years, was there ever, or can you think of a situation that made you really proud of, happening with the artists that you represented, and where you were really, wow, this is really an amazing story, or what they've accomplished and what you were associated with.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, there's been so many people over the years we represented. It
Try speaking the microphone.
is it not? There were so many people over the years, so that it's so hard to be able to say one time or whatever. I don't know. It was maybe, I don't know. We were really proud when we moved into the new space on Dragon in 2005 because we had been over in off of Maple and Cedar Springs for so long. That was, I think, 13 years at that point, and we were going to move and triple the space. And so now we're like, we don't have enough artists. And so I think that, I don't know if this truly answers your question, but we went to all of our artists and say, hey, do you know some people that maybe we can contact? Because we have a lot of space and we have a lot of walls and we're going to have a lot of shows and we need more artists. And everybody's kind of, we got a lot of input with that. So
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if that truly answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, having that proud moment where you enter a new space and you have the backing from your artist is a really amazing. It is an accomplishment. Having that trust from the artist and just saying, okay, I want to, show you friends of mine or fellow artists to exhibit with you. So I think that's just that trust, which I think is still very vital to the gallery today. The trust from the artists in what we do here, and they let us, not do what we want, but pretty much they have a great yeah, trust in us, and I think that's part of what you've built here. So that's makes my life very easy with the working with the artist that partly you started representing. So it's really wonderful.
Well, and part of it was we just had a business model that we wanted to make sure that everybody thrived. And so part of it was that we would pay our artists very quickly after we received payment rather than waiting 30 or 45 days.
Yeah.
And just that people appreciated that as well because most artists aren't wealthy. And so and they spend a lot of money getting ready for a show. And so they need their money back. They need resources. So that was really one of the main things that Kenneth and I from the beginning knew we were going to handle it business that way.
Yeah. So you mentioned the move from Cedar Springs to Dragon Street. What prompted that?
Our lease was up. We needed more space, and we were looking at spaces on Fairmont and Cedar Springs and that area, and the rent was crazy, even at that time. This is 2005. Also, the spaces were just not very conducive. It was very choppy and everything. And so I forget. I think Kenneth had Bob Banks was a friend of his, and Bob mentioned that there was a space on Dragon. It's 5,650 square feet because it's 50 by 125. That was going to be available to purchase, and Kenneth's like, you need to come look at this. You need to come look at this. And I'm like, okay. So I did, and it's this big warehouse space, but it had bathrooms, and it had a kitchen. And it was originally going to be set up for residential, but you couldn't get any residential financing at the time. So we talked to the owner. She wanted to sell. It was perfectly good, except for it had no interior walls, which we had to put in. And it just made sense that we could triple the space, have a lot more artists that we could represent, and pay less money. Once it was on a mortgage, but we still paid less money, and it just made sense to be over there. We got a lot of blowback from some of our clients and friends about, oh, why would you go over there? That's out of the way. It's not going to be as good. But it made sense, and so we did, and it's probably one of the best things we could have ever done because it became, again, we were kind of fortunate. When we opened in '92 with the recession, we moved to Dragon in 2005, where people kind of weren't over here, and everybody then wanted to be over here, and so it just made a lot of sense to do it.
Yeah, I think you're also, I mean, the design district in 2005 was not quite what it is now. I think that's also, people need to understand that it was very much
It was a ghost town.
ghost town.
I mean, now it's not, but with the restaurants and the living and the whole thing over here. But then it was, and Nancy Whiteneck was over here as well. But beyond that, there was no other galleries, and so I know Holly came over later and things like that. It just made sense. It gave us more space, and then we could create kind of some synergy. Contemporary art dealers of Dallas came into existence, and we worked together, and it really worked well for everybody.
Yeah. So, but at the time, you were not really aware what it was going to become. You wouldn't be able to tell. And I mean, I think it's a really bold move to, potentially alienate your collectors. Will they come down here and all that? So,
It's funny because it made it easier actually. Come down the tollway and just turn right on Oak Lawn and then get to Dragon and make a left. It was easier than trying to explain off of Cedar Springs and Maple, just because Dallas is mostly on a grid, except for when you get into like in the Cedar Springs Maple area, it's a spoke. And trying to explain to people, well, you need to turn left on this street, and when you get here, make a right, but watch out over. It made it a lot easier to explain how to get to the gallery.
Yeah. So, talking of collectors and how they have changed, and Dallas itself as well, how do you think all that has changed over the years? Like your collector base, but also the Dallas as an art city. Where collectors go out and actually buy art. Do you think that has actually changed over the years, or what is your perception of that?
A number of years ago, we were approached by, I won't say which nonprofit, to come, and they wanted to work more with the local galleries in terms of, we could help them with like auction items and stuff like that. And they met with all the gallery owners, gallerists, and one of the board members basically in the meeting is telling people, well, I don't buy art in Dallas. We don't come here to Dallas for good art. And so, of course, that didn't work well with the other gallerists, nor with us. And what I would have said to him then if I had been there, and I'll say today, over the years, the Dallas art scene, the Dallas arts have really grown. I mean, you see it with the arts district, what's happening in the design district, has really grown. And Dallas itself is the fifth largest metroplex or MTA in the country, that's a lot of people. There's 9 million people or 10 million people. So yes, everything has grown. Everything has grown for the better. There are things, the roads haven't, which is, that's a whole different story. But yeah, it's just become, over the years, the collectors, now we get collectors from Europe that call us for artwork, or it was cool to ship artwork to Spain or Mexico or the Far East or wherever. And so, and now, and also after 30 some odd years, the collectors' their children are buying art from us as well. So it's just, or from you now.
Yes,
So it's pretty cool.
that is cool. So, but Dallas is not quite, in the space where New York or LA is. It might not ever. Maybe that's not the goal, or that's not the do all end all. But what do you think Dallas needs to become even more of an acclaimed arts scene and arts market?
Well, the city needs to become more involved in helping, but also, it's just working together. I have a good friend that's from London, and they would kind of always complain about Dallas. Oh, Dallas is, such a small town, blah blah blah. I'm like, give me 1,000 years, and let me see what Dallas is like. And we're 200 years old, and surprise, it's not like London or New York, but we are growing, and I think that we just need a little more. I think the city needs be more supportive, and you know just keep working on it, because from where it was in '92 to where it is in 2026 to where it will be in 2050 is, the sky's the limit,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I like that attitude. So that's great.
Hopefully, I'll be here to talk.
Um, so I'm sure there were not always easy times in the gallery business. So do you remember a time when you thought the gallery was going to have to close, or where you were, oh, this is really looking grim. I don't know if we're gonna be able to continue.
Personally, because of Kenneth and I, we had lived together for all these years, and we were breaking up, and it was tough. But that was one of the times. I mean, that was a very emotional and personal time. Still is. Um,
Take your time.
what were we going to do? We were getting divorced. We had been married. But we both realized that we shouldn't. I mean, we had an obligation to the artist. We had a very good business. We had built this. I mean, I tell people this in a joking way, but it's kind of true. I don't have any kids. Um, this was our child. So, sorry. Um, that was probably the most difficult time. But we recognized that, we may not be able to live together, but we could still work together. So that was good. Sorry, I didn't mean to start that. My tears.
That's okay. But I guess I can kind of skip to that chapter maybe, of Kenneth and operating the gallery for such a long time, and for 20 years there was a marriage, there was a relationship that was happening in the gallery, but also between you both privately, and how did you make that work for the time? I mean, it seems a tough one. I mean, if I, you know, were to imagine, running the business with my wife, who I love beyond all doubts, but I don't know if we could operate a business together.
Well, and I talked to Kenneth about this yesterday, and he goes, because had your law practice, and you had your own office, and we were not there together 24/7, made it to where it could work. Being able to, you know, do what I was doing, obviously helping what my part of the gallery, but him being here on a daily basis made it work. And then just the people we met, and just having a good time, and traveling together, and going to art galleries, and going to events, and meeting new artists and new people. I mean, just made it so. I mean, it was fun. It is fun.
Yeah, it's great, and it's lovely to share that with each other. But I'm sure on a day-to-day basis, it is too much intersection. You're together 24/7 and basically.
Well, the conversations would mostly be about the gallery that day, and so um, at times it became difficult because it was difficult times in terms of business and things that may have happened that day or whatever. But ultimately, it was the passion and the love for this business that that transcended any of that.
And
You know,
you were still an active part of the gallery. Maybe you can talk a little about, you did earlier, but where your different skill sets really came together well to have, maybe Kenneth operate very freely in the decisions that he could take on, the curatorial side, or how did that work out?
we worked. It would be joint on the curatorial side, although there would be times where he felt strongly about an artist where I may not have, and vice versa. And so we would allow a little bit of okay, this time, we'll go ahead and try this artist, and maybe the next time it's my turn to choose somebody. Um, but his strength was, and I think all the artists that are here today that we represent or have will agree that Kenneth is a very good communicator and listener, and has good vision and creativity. Um, I mean, he put when we moved to Park House, it's been 3 years ago, three. Um, I mean, we were taking about 1,000 square feet less, and you know, renting this building, and he was able to make it function and work really well, and just with his insight. Me, on the other hand, I'm negotiating the lease. I'm working on dealing with the IRS or whatever. Mine is a very mundane background. I was the person behind the scenes. People would call on, is this Craighead Gallery? And I'm like, yeah, it's Craighead Green Gallery, but or is Mr. Head there? I'm like, yeah, no, he died. You know, but I didn't. That wasn't important to me. It was just our names were there, and so again, I would handle the business. We would get into. I guess there would be some. It's like I don't know if we should spend the money on that or whatever. There may be a little butting heads there, but I mean, we pretty much agreed on everything.
Yeah. So, you know, as you said, this was somewhat your child. You're the thing you raised over 30 something years, and you passed it on to me, to which I'm more than thankful off. You making that decision of stepping away and letting me, take over what you've created, and now, transitioning into the new name as Bardin Gallery as well. That there's still a foundation of what you've built, but it, will carry a new name, it will carry a new brand, it will, move away from what you've built as well, with a new vision. So, um, when you and Kenneth began thinking about stepping away from the gallery, what did you hope would happen, or what were your hopes for the future?
Well, we hope what would happen is exactly what has happened. That whoever we that took over the gallery from us would, first of all, when you buy a business, you should buy the business because it's doing well, and obviously don't make any major changes. And that was kind of a little bit of a conversation with William at the beginning. That if you're going to spend the money, don't make changes. Keep it the way it is, and then subtly go and do what you need to do to make it yours. And so, that was part of what we were looking for. Obviously, somebody that knew what they were doing. Obviously, somebody that would listen for the most part. And then just somebody had a passion and understanding that, here you are, you're being given a really good opportunity, and so don't mess it up. I'm going to use the word mess, but anyway, it's G-rated.
Uh, but yeah, well, always, I always have been really thankful for what you've taught me over the years, but also the opportunity which I was given by the two of you. It's really, um, it transformed my life really. And yeah, I just couldn't be more thankful and for the friendship that we have and the opportunities you've given me. So,
What was the name of the city in Germany we were living at the time?
well, I was living in my hometown, but
What was it called?
Umerstadt.
Yeah,
Umerstadt to Dallas. So it really,
yeah, there's a big change.
it is 500 people to 9 million people. So it's,
But your mother's the mayor, or was. So.
yes, yes. She might run again. Well, who knows?
I hope so.
So,
I'm going to key to that city, if no.
yeah, you earned it for
Thank
sure.
you.
But yeah, when we first started working together 5 years ago when I moved here, did you ever begin to think, this might be, the future of the gallery, and this might be the person who will take it over, or was that still very in the very distant future?
At first, obviously, Kenneth and I had talked about these things over the years, but we wanted you to be able to. We just didn't know, we didn't know you well enough, through our initial Zoom conversation to you getting on an airplane and coming here and starting to work for us.
Which I understand, by the way. It was just for context. We had a conversation, and then 2 weeks later, I was leaving the country, flying in, and starting to work for them. So it was a very kind of quick transition for all of us, I think. So that was kind of a crazy situation.
We can thank Pam Nelson for that.
That's right.
Pam's here.
She's here right now.
Yes. It just took a while for us to, realize that we believed that you would, you had the demeanor and the understanding and would listen, and you had your own ways of thinking, but you recognized that you didn't know everything and that you were willing to learn. So, yeah, we at a couple of years into that, we figured that maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah,
which we did.
So that was kind of when you felt comfortable to say, okay, this might be the future that we're heading towards.
Yes, very much so.
So, you said I was a somewhat good listener. Was there a piece of advice that you've given me where you were saying that you still think is really important, and you still remember that?
I think I mentioned it, but it really is just, stay a course. And make subtle changes. I use an example of Edith Baker Gallery. When she sold it, Sydney bought it and immediately changed it. And to the point of, why would you spend the money to change something that's been doing well for so many years? And she wasn't able to stay in business. And that was, I think, I'm pretty sure we had this conversation about that. I probably use this example.
Yeah.
It's like, don't make major changes at first, but you can change the name. It's okay. Now.
I hear a little resentment there.
Now.
Yeah, but it's so, that is what I really, took to heart too, is because I really took a lot of time. It's been over a year and a half since I've taken over the gallery. So I think it is time now, and it's a good time to do that. So, but are there certain things that you wish never, kind of stay at the core of the gallery and will not change even over time, even with a different name on the?
Well, New Texas Talent.
Yes.
I think that should never change, because the opportunity that you give people and the opportunity that you find that yourself in, with being able to find new artists that you might not otherwise have looked at because you're not looking, is probably one of the major thing. And I think that's something that I'm pretty sure, if there's one thing that will be remembered for, is New Texas Talent.
Yeah, it has really become an institution in the Texas art scene for sure. So it's definitely something I want to keep on, and because it is such an amazing program for young artists and also discover artists. There's every facet of it is really, really amazing. And
I'll have to license you the name, though. I'm sorry.
change the name. So over 34 years, was there ever a situation where you think there was a missed opportunity?
With artists or
Just generally, was there ever a situation where you were thinking, "Oh, I should have acted on this because I never really got around to it"?
no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that just we made the decisions to open at the right time. We made the decision to move at the right time to Dragon. I think we made the decision to sell the building on Dragon 2 years, 3 years ago at the right time, and to move over here at the right time.
Yeah.
Nothing was perfect, but I don't. There are no regrets at all.
Good. That's how you should live without regrets.
Try to. Yeah.
But what are you proudest of then? Is there a certain thing you're proudest of?
It's just this idea that we had when we were going to open the gallery that it was on a whim, and that we just thought, because of Kenneth's background and my business acumen, that it would just make sense. It gave him an opportunity to kind of do some design work from at the gallery and work with people. And, it just, the fact that it's still in business, you just never know. I mean, but like I said, we didn't move we had the opportunity to be in Deep Ellum, we didn't do it. And that was probably a good thing. We had an opportunity to take half the space, we had to take the whole thing. I mean, it was the right thing at that time. And then all these other things that happened over the years. Meeting artists. I remember one time, Pancho Luna is an artist from Argentina. He and his girlfriend were driving from Los Angeles to New Orleans and then to Miami. And he wanted us to see his work. And I remember seeing his work, and he did these interior scapes. They're just amazing. And so he said, well, I can leave you 12. And we were like, okay, that'd be great. And he did. And by the time he got to New Orleans, like 2 days later, we had sold all 12. And when he called and asked us how things were, we were like, can we have some more? And I think in the first month of working with him, I think we sold 25 paintings. And at the time, they weren't expensive. I mean, it's relative, but it was just amazing. And it's things like that, little fortuitous moments that you never know at that time are really, but until you look back, that it was the right thing to do, right opportunity, just gave you the opportunity to do it.
Well, I want to ask you my last question of the talking, and maybe we can get into a little Q&A here. But what is it? Is there anything that excites you about the name change, about the new era that we're heading into, a new chapter? Is there anything you find exciting or maybe frightening, scary?
Oh, nothing scary for me.
Good. Plenty of scary for me.
Maybe for you, but not for me. No, I just think it's great. I think it's the right time for you to do it. I mean, when you originally told me you wanted to do this, I was like, I don't think the agreements we have allow that. And then I had to look at them like, oh, it didn't say it, but it's okay. I mean, you need to blaze your own future, and I think that I'm sure over the last year and a half or 2 years, when people would call and you would say Craighead Green, and they would ask for Kenneth or me, and they didn't know that obviously what had happened in terms of the business changing hands, and so now you get to do it, and it's under your name and your reputation and everything else, and as long as you keep making the payments, we're good. I'm seriously kidding, but yeah.
Well, thank you, and I again appreciate everything you have done for me over the past, and everything that our friendship, and that I always can come to you and talk to you about anything I need. So it's
and really, if there's a baby too, Steve is a good name. Steve Bardin.
Next to Wesley, you mean?
Yeah, Wesley and Steve.
Wesley and Steve.
Yeah.
We'll see about that.